Tonight, hospitals on the brink. The unprecedented surge of children sick with respiratory illnesses. 3 out of 4 pediatric ICU beds now full across the country. An alarming number of kids severely ill with a virus that is not COVID. Hospitals out of space, forced to airlift patients to other states. Cases of the flu now spiking in almost all parts of the country, too. What you need to know to keep your kids safe. Also breaking tonight, Trump subpoenaed the January 6th committee, formally requesting documents and testimony from the former president. But will he comply? Plus, the Trump ally just sentenced to jail. How much time Steve Bannon could spend behind bars. Deadly apartment inferno, the tragic scene in Milwaukee, at least 6 people killed in an early morning fire. The criminal investigation just launched. Plus, heroic rescue, an officer racing to pull a driver out of a burning car. The harrowing moments caught on camera. And good evening, everybody. I'm Aaron Gilchrist in for Tom. We begin top story with that troubling spike in respiratory illnesses in children. Hospitals across the country push to their limits as cases of RSV surge. Nationwide, a majority of pediatric ICU beds are now filled. One major hospital in Texas forced to fly sick children out. Now, this virus typically causes mild symptoms similar to a cold, but it can turn into a severe infection in young children. Tonight, you'll hear from several parents whose kids battled extreme illnesses. Health officials warning that the convergence of RSV, COVID, and the flu could make this winter very difficult. Dr. John Torres standing by with advice on how to handle the dangerous triple threat and what you need to know about vaccines. We begin first with NBC's Gabe Gutierrez, who leads us off now from New York.
Tonight, as hospitals battle the early spike in child respiratory illnesses, nearly 75% of the country's estimated 40,000 pediatric hospital beds are full. A major hospital in Houston has had to fly out several sick patients because they're out of room.
The fact that right now we're having to transport, kids hundreds of miles away, if not outside of the state, is very, very rare.
The CDC out with new numbers today showing flu activity keeps rising in most of the country, especially the southeast and south central U.S. But most concerning to many parents, the relentless spread of RSV, a respiratory illness often with mild cold-like symptoms that can lead to severe infections in very young children or older adults.
It's the most terrifying thing as a parent because you're completely helpless.
In Ohio, Shanisty Ireland and her 2-month-old son Asa just got home from the hospital after a harrowing few days fighting RSV.
I was standing there in trauma talking to doctors and nurses, and I'm just bawling my eyes out, and they were trying to explain to me what was going on.
In Connecticut, Tara Ficaselli's 3-month-old son Tanner is out of the ICU and recovering after spending days on a ventilator.
This has been definitely the hardest 2 weeks of my life.
This video taking just hours before he was rushed to the ER.
Before we called 911 to come in, he was perfectly healthy. A virus this common could make him this sick is just really alarming.
You're expecting a bad influenza season based.
Today, we visited the largest pediatric hospital in New York State, Cohen Children's Medical Center, which is already above capacity.
What would you tell parents of very young children who start to see their kids get sick? When should they bring them to the emergency room?
Sure. So if their fevers are high, if they're having what looks like a difficult time breathing, if they're so tired appearing or they're lethargic and they're not even able to eat or drink well, they should be seen sooner rather than later.
And Gabe joins us now from outside Cohen Children's Medical Center in Queens, New York. Gabe, you mentioned in the piece there that this is the largest pediatric hospital in New York State. It's already at capacity. How are doctors handling all this overflow of patients?
Well, Aaron, this hospital is already using rooms that it doesn't normally use, and it is planning for the future, getting creative for how it deals with this surge. But as we reported yesterday, other hospitals, including one in Connecticut, are actually in talks with FEMA and the National Guard to open up a medical tent in its parking lot. Aaron?
Gabe, I can't help but to think about the strain we saw on healthcare workers during the height of COVID, right? Are there enough of them to actually handle an early surge in respiratory viruses like this?
Well, Aaron, across the country, there are many hospitals that have been dealing with staff shortages for quite a while, and that challenge is only expected to get worse as we head into the winter. Aaron?
Gabe Gutierrez in Queens, New York. Thank you, Gabe. For more on this alarming spike in RSV cases now, I want to bring in NBC News medical correspondent Dr. John Torres. Dr. John, we were thinking of this like a triple threat, right? RSV, more flu cases, new COVID variants are out there. What's the outlook really for this winter?
And that's exactly right, Aaron, and that's what's happening. Talking to experts today across the country, they're saying, yes, we are seeing RSV patients in the ERs and the intensive care units, but we're also seeing the flu patients, we're seeing COVID patients, and another respiratory virus called enterovirus as well. So it's all complicating it and making it so that these hospitals are getting to the point where they're starting to get overloaded. And we haven't even hit our winter months yet. RSV typically peaks December through February. We're in October, so it definitely could be climbing and peaking at a time frame. Flu, we're starting early, but that typically peaks a little later as well. And then COVID, like you mentioned, these new variants we're looking at right now could start taking over, and they could start adding to more cases. And that's that triple threat that a lot of people are worried about. And so we want to make sure that we keep an eye on that. We keep our hospitals as staffed as possible, and hopefully keep children out of the hospital as much as possible. So that way we can make sure that they stay safe, their families stay safe, and everyone stays as healthy as possible, Aaron.
You know, we encourage people to get the COVID vaccine, to get the flu vaccine. Is there a vaccine that works for RSV?
Not yet, Aaron, and there are some vaccines in the pipeline right now, particularly for adults above the age of 65. There are 3 vaccines that are getting towards the end of their human trials, and hopefully we'll be looking at getting approval or authorization here soon. As far as the children's vaccine, this is a little bit tougher, and there's no vaccine right now that's that close, but there is a monoclonal antibody therapy that might be in the early part of next year. But the one thing you can do, and this is important, is that you can protect your children and yourself from COVID and from the flu with those vaccines, which even though they don't protect you against RSV, they keep your immune system as strong as possible, so that way you can fight off RSV if that does happen to come your way. And so again, keeping them protected from a couple of these can help protect them from other ones as well by keeping their immune system strong, Aaron, and that's important right now.
I wonder if there's anything outside of those vaccines, anything that parents can do to prevent the spread of RSV as we go into and through the winter.
And when you think of RSV and how it spreads, think of COVID, think of the flu. It's a respiratory virus, and so it spreads essentially the same way. It's very contagious, and unfortunately, adults and older children can get it, and it seems like a cold, and they can spread it to younger children or older immunocompromised adults, and that can cause an issue. And so if you have a very young child, you want to make sure, especially right now, that you don't really go into crowds with them where other people might be sick. You don't pass them around to relatives and friends at this point. You want to make sure they stay safe. And then, like the doctor in Gabe's piece was talking about, those warning signs to look for in order to go ahead and call your doctor or take them to the hospital. Trouble breathing, not eating well, somnolent or lethargic, just not acting normal. Those are signs that you want to go ahead and take them in and make them, have them seen, just to be precautious, and it's better safe in that case, especially now since we know there's a lot of cases out there, Aaron.
All right, Dr. John Torres, we appreciate the good advice there. Thank you. Now to major news out of Washington today. The January 6th committee issuing a subpoena to former President Donald Trump, ordering him to turn over documents and to testify. This is a federal judge sentenced the president's former chief strategist, Steve Bannon, to prison for refusing to cooperate. NBC News chief White House correspondent Peter Alexander has details.
Tonight, the January 6th committee taking a dramatic step, issuing a subpoena to former President Trump for documents and testimony, writing they have overwhelming evidence that you personally orchestrated and oversaw a multi-part effort to overturn the 2020 presidential election and to obstruct the peaceful transition of power. The subpoena calls for Mr. Trump to testify on November 14th, after the midterms, though it's all but certain to trigger a court fight. Tonight, no word from Mr. Trump whether he'll comply. He recently attacked the committee as a total bust that's only served to further divide our country. And there's news tonight on the Mar-a-Lago documents investigation. The Washington Post first reporting that some of those classified documents seized by the FBI included highly sensitive intelligence regarding Iran and China, according to people familiar with the matter. NBC News has now confirmed the report. The former president, who slammed the DOJ investigation as partisan, saying the FBI and the Department of Justice are now leaking nonstop on the document hoax. Here in Washington, Mr. Trump's longtime advisor Steve Bannon was today sentenced to 4 months in prison on misdemeanor contempt of Congress charges for defying a subpoena by the January 6th committee. Tonight, he's free pending his appeal. On the eve of January 6th, Bannon warned all hell is going to break loose, and tonight predicted a Republican wave in next month's midterms.
On November 8th, the American people will raise judgment, and we will groom. The Biden administration ends on the evening of the 8th of November.
The president tonight touting a historic drop in the deficit while arguing if Republicans take back Congress, they'll crash the economy.
It's mega trickle down. Mega trickle down. The kind of policies that have failed the country before and will fail it again.
But Republicans say the Democrats are already responsible for damage to the economy.
Runaway inflation, begging for foreign countries to produce oil while our people are paying the price at the pump. If they stay in power for 2 more years, they'll destroy the country.
And Peter Alexander joins us from the White House now. So, Peter, we got a new hint tonight from the Biden family about whether the president actually plans to run again in 2024.
Yeah, Aaron, that's right. In a new interview with NBC News, the First Lady, Jill Biden, made the argument for her husband to stay in office, saying that he understands government better than anyone else. And a close aide tonight says the First Lady and the family fully support another run. Aaron.
Peter Alexander at the White House. Peter, thanks. Now we turn to a horrifying apartment fire in Wisconsin. There is now a criminal investigation into what caused that fire, where 6 people were found dead. NBC's Jesse Kirsch has the latest.
Tonight,
have you victim removed.
Police say at least 6 people are dead after authorities say a fire tore through this apartment building in the Milwaukee suburbs.
I heard sirens at approximately 5 a.m. and then I didn't hear anything for about 10 minutes. And then all of a sudden I heard more and more and more.
I looked down the road and saw a big structure fire. And I was hoping that there was nobody was injured, nobody got really seriously hurt.
Unfortunately, authorities say multiple people were found dead, and now Heartland, Wisconsin police are taking a closer look at the cause.
This is an active criminal investigation by the Heartland Police Department.
Officials say reports of the blaze came in around 5:11 this morning. Firefighters and police soon making rescues from the 4-family apartment building and from its balconies.
First responding police and fire crews were met with a large amount of fire.
24 agencies responded to the harrowing scene described in scanner traffic.
I was advising at the living room on fire. We do have a caller that is also trapped on a deck.
The Red Cross tells NBC News 10 people survived, including 5 children, adding it's providing emergency help and comfort to 3 families who were displaced. Now the investigation continues as a community grieves.
It's going to be bad for the next couple days.
And Jesse Kirsch joins us now live. Jesse, I know it's early in this whole investigative process. Do we know much more about how these victims died?
Yeah, and Aaron, obviously there's a question as to what the cause of death for these people who unfortunately were found dead is. At this point, authorities again pointing to the fact that it is the early stages of the investigation surrounding this blaze, so they would not confirm if everyone found dead had died during the fire or perhaps if anyone had been killed prior to the fire by something else. So that is obviously a question that remains with us. And we do know, according to our affiliate, WTMJ, that a local school district acknowledged in a statement to our affiliate that some of its families have been impacted in the aftermath of this fire, but they would not go into much further detail. And obviously, there are privacy concerns around something like this as well, Aaron.
Jesse Kirsch live for us tonight. Jesse, thank you. Next to an inside look at the looming shakeup for Twitter. New reporting from the Washington Post revealing that the tech giant planned to slash a quarter of its workforce by the end of next year. But the company's impending sale to billionaire Elon Musk could mean a total reshaping of Twitter, with Musk reportedly telling investors that he planned to cut 75% of jobs there. Wall Street Journal Silicon Valley reporter Elizabeth Dwoskin is here now to share more of her exclusive reporting on this. So, Elizabeth, you and your colleagues learned that Twitter was considering major job cuts even before this sale to Musk, but up to 75% of the workforce eliminated there. What would that mean for this company? All right, looks like we might be having
apologies.
We can hear you now.
Before I dive in, say we're the Washington Post, not the Wall Street Journal, but we just think that these cuts they'd be so dramatic. So Elon Musk has talked about how he wanted to transform Twitter in lots of ways, but he's never actually put hard numbers to the cuts he wants to make, though he's intimated. So our scoop that he's cutting 75% of jobs, possibly more, that he's planned to, is I mean, the only way to describe it is what I've heard from people who work at Twitter is that they wouldn't know how to keep the lights on at that level. And that's a big problem because this isn't just a random company. This is a broadcast service for news and breaking information and public conversation and political conversation for the whole world.
And Elizabeth, I apologize. I lived and worked in D.C. for a long time. I know the Washington Post well, and I apologize for the mistake there.
No worries.
I do want to ask you, though, what is Twitter going to look like for us users if Musk goes forward with really massive layoffs there?
I mean, I think it's what I said. They wouldn't be able to keep the lights on is kind of what I've heard from a lot of people who work there. I mean, think that like a lot of tech companies have been super flush in the last number of years in the economy, and a lot of them are downsizing a bit. Yeah, you can take out some of that bloat. These are very highly paid people and they don't always do that much. But 75% of the company would destroy Twitter as we know it. I actually think Twitter is over.
Well, go a little further with that then. Twitter is over, meaning no matter what, for the user, the experience and the usefulness for Twitter is going to go away?
I would think so. If you're making cuts that drastic, though Elon does say he wants to replace it with chosen people. But, I've covered technology now for over a decade, and especially places like Twitter where they run their own data centers, there's a lot of institutional knowledge. You can't just fire someone and expect that the next person that you hire is just going to pick up and know how to do it. In any company, but especially in technology. So there is really a question of leaving the lights on. I mean, they run their own data centers and they've already had issues with hacks, security issues, with the staffing level that they have. Then you look at what that means for the public. I mean, there has been false news on Twitter that has caused public panics. It's caused the stock price of companies to drop. Twitter has to have enough staff to be able to monitor misinformation, false news, bullying, harassment, political disinformation, influence campaigns from places like Russia. I mean, that's what makes the service useful is these things are on there, but they're kept at least somewhat at bay. I mean, we've written a lot of critical articles about how at bay they are kept, and Twitter has a lot of problems. But then just imagine a 75% or more reduction in the workforce. Could they do any of that? Especially if they're also cutting back on data centers and infrastructure and technology. It's like when I say Twitter's over, I mean, I think Twitter would be unrecognizable in the sense that you would go on and it could be such a toxic place that you and I wouldn't want to be on there, or that it would be so full of false information that it wouldn't be useful.
Wow. Yeah, your reporting gives some real insight into why Twitter was so keen to find a buyer at this point. But what do you think is Musk's goal in gutting the company then?
I think he genuinely believes that Twitter is completely bloated, doesn't need as many people, and probably has no clue about how Twitter works. He hasn't really seemed to show much interest since he's become the acquirer of this company in actually how Twitter works. He wants to make it in his image, and he's talked a lot about free speech and how things shouldn't be censored. And so maybe he thinks that too many people who work at Twitter act like the censorship police, and they shouldn't be, they shouldn't have jobs. But a lot of people have come back, even people who are supporters of Musk in some cases have come back and say, that's not how it works. We're not just talking about the censorship police. We're talking about preventing things like child sexual exploitation. Like, do you want to go on Twitter and see offensive pornography if that's not what you if that's not what you sought out? Well, there have to be people that moderate that stuff. So it's a whole universe of stuff that I don't think, from reporting on this for the last year, that I don't think Musk has really taken into account. I just think he sees it really simplistically. We need to make it more open for free speech. Twitter, has too many overpaid employees, which is probably true. I think we wrote in the story the average salary for an engineer there is like $300,000 a year. That's probably on the low end for Silicon Valley. But still, that's a lot of money. They have salespeople there that make $700,000, $800,000 a year.
Wow, some real food for thought here, and we appreciate your reporting, Elizabeth, sharing it with us here. And we encourage folks to go to the Washington Post and read the reporting about this. Elizabeth Dwoskin from the Washington Post, thank you.
Thanks so much for having me.
Well, we take you now to the Mississippi River and the low water levels in that vital economic engine. A drought causing the river to dry up to levels not seen in decades. It's a multi-billion-dollar shipping industry that is paying the price, too. NBC's Morgan Chesky is in Baton Rouge for us tonight.
Tonight, the mighty Mississippi brought to its knees by drought. Massive barges carrying crops or steel slowed or even stuck.
If one of these breaks off, you run the risk of having to shut down a whole section.
You do potentially, depending on the severity of where it breaks off.
We joined Coast Guard Lieutenant Commander Mary Gilday on the water near New Orleans, where traffic slowed due to the crisis upstream. The problem is especially bad near Memphis, where water levels are dropping to lows not seen in 70 years.
Well, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's bad. We know how important this economic impact is to the United States.
The river's low levels could lead to economic crisis. The Mississippi supports a $12.6 billion shipping industry and tens of thousands of jobs. 60% of all grain exported from the United States is shipped on the river. But today, 127 vessels and more than 1,800 barges are backed up at 4 waterway closures.
I mean, I've never seen the river this low before.
In Arkansas, the rivers dropped so low, farmer Roger Smith had to put his soybean harvest on hold. Now unable to wait any longer and without a storage facility, he can't use the river to move his crop.
Causing us to even lose money, you know, on the crop that we grew.
Smith estimates he'll take a nearly $40,000 loss. Back on the water.
With the current forecast, I don't see it getting any better.
A problem that deepens as a river disappears.
Morgan Chesky joins us now from Baton Rouge, where the water levels are visibly dropping there. Morgan, we know the Army Corps of Engineers is dredging the river there. Any other measures being taken at this point to try to help this problem?
Yeah, Aaron, there absolutely are. In fact, while the dredgers are working up and down these sections over the river where levels have dropped to dangerously low levels, there's a brand new problem that is at the head of where the Mississippi River meets the Gulf of Mexico. And because the water level has gotten so low, salt water is actually flowing upwards into the Mississippi. To combat that, the Corps of Engineers has actually built a wall of mud right at the mouth of this massive river that is hoping to stop the salt water and allow this fresh water to continue to flow out. Everyone, of course, hoping for more rain up north that would eventually solve this entire problem. But for right now, there is no immediate rain in the forecast. Aaron?
Morgan Chesky in Baton Rouge, thank you. Next, we turn to the ongoing scandal in Los Angeles after a leaked audio recording was made public about 2 weeks ago. In it, you hear 3 city officials using racist remarks against minorities. The city council president has since resigned, but 2 other members are refusing to step down. Our Telemundo partners sitting down with disgraced councilman Kevin De Leon as calls for his resignation mount. Randy Serrano has the latest.
Soy culpable por mi silencio, porque fue una falta de liderazgo.
Kevin De Leon, one of the disgraced council members of the LA City Council, apologizing, but saying he won't resign in an interview with Telemundo's Julio Vaquero.
Yo voy a seguir trabajando, voy a seguir adelante con mis políticas públicas que favorecen a nuestra gente. Mi compromiso es con mi gente y por eso sigo pidiendo disculpas.
De Leon's decision coming after an explosive 2 weeks following a leaked audio recording that was made public.
So you'll start seeing them line up.
In the nearly hour-long recording, you can hear former LA City Council President Nury Martinez making revolting remarks about a black child and indigenous Mexican immigrants during what was supposed to be a discussion on redistricting ahead of this year's election.
I see a lot of little short, dark people. Yeah.
The remarks made behind closed doors in 2021. At one point, you can hear De Leon joining Martinez. At another, Martinez directing their attacks to fellow white council member Mike Bonin and his young black son.
There's nothing you can do to control him. And I'm just like, oh my God.
Martinez disparaging the toddler using the Spanish word for monkey. De Leon then mocking that Bonin carried his adopted son as if he were a designer bag. The group then adding that he couldn't control him.
They're raising him like a little white kid, which I was like, this kid needs a beat down. Like, let me take him around the corner and then I'll bring him back.
The audio, originally posted anonymously on Reddit and first reported by the LA Times, has not been independently verified by NBC News, and we do not know if it's been edited.
¿Hubo otras conversaciones con estos colegas antes o después de este tipo?
No, nunca jamás.
Martinez is the only person who has since resigned from her post. But the calls for De Leon and Gil Cedillo, who was also part of the leaked audio conversation, to step down continue to grow. From the president,
he believes that they all should resign. The language that was used and tolerated during that conversation was unacceptable.
To NBA legend Magic Johnson calling for Cedillo and De Leon to step down, tweeting, "Let the city heal and move forward. The people of Los Angeles voted you in the position, and now they are calling for you to resign." During a live town hall hosted by the Los Angeles Times and Fox 11 LA Friday, Councilman Mike Bonin insisting Cedillo has to resign.
What he needs to do for his own sake, for his own reputation, for his own legacy, is he needs to resign.
But De Leon continues to stand by his decision to remain in office.
Mi comentario nunca jamás fue dirigido, nunca jamás, siendo padre, yo nunca jamás diría algo negativo sobre un niño, jamás.
Para dejarlo claro, ¿usted no cree que hizo comentarios racistas en esa conversación?
No.
Randy Serrano, NBC News.
Our thanks to Randy Serrano from Telemundo for that reporting. Still ahead tonight, the deadly crash involving a school bus. A college football player hit and killed while riding an e-scooter in California. What we're learning about the students who were on board that bus at the time. Plus, new details in last year's shooting at a Michigan high school. The plea the teenage suspect is expected to enter on Monday. Back now with Top Stories news feed, and we begin with a college football player hit and killed by a school bus in California. San Jose State University confirmed 18-year-old Camden McWright was hit while riding an electric scooter near campus. 14 high school students were on the bus at the time. They were not hurt. The bus driver is cooperating with the investigation. New details tonight on the teenager accused of a high school shooting in Michigan. Prosecutors say the 16-year-old will plead guilty on Monday to several felony charges, including murder and terrorism. He's accused of killing 4 fellow students at Oxford High School last November. He faces life in prison. His parents are also facing charges for buying him the gun used in that shooting. Police officers in California caught on camera saving a driver from a burning car. Body camera footage showing the officers racing toward that fiery scene near Los Angeles. The driver was pulled to safety. He and one of the officers actually treated at a hospital for minor injuries. Police say that driver showed signs of being under the influence. And a big change this holiday season. Charlie Brown holiday specials will not be on TV. Now, in 2020, Apple TV Plus bought the exclusive rights to the franchise. You know them, The Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown Thanksgiving, Charlie Brown Christmas. Well, after a backlash, the Peanuts classics aired for a last time on PBS. That was in 2021. Apple TV will allow non-subscribers to watch the movies for free on select days during the holiday season. We want to turn now to those ongoing protests in Iran, the demonstrations led by women getting support around the world. Our Andrea Mitchell sat down with 3 Iranian-American women who are closely watching the situation in their homeland, and they say they see this as a turning point in the Islamic Republic.
3 Iranian-American women whose hearts are in Iran, but who are experiencing today's protests from thousands of miles away.
It's heart-wrenching to watch them go through what they are doing, but they realize that tomorrow is a better day if they are free.
Obviously, of course, it's really sad to see what's happening to them, but I'm so proud and I'm so embarrassed that my generation, people like me, didn't do anything for these girls, because they're changing the life for their children and grandchildren. It's not just about them.
These women are all in their 30s. Benaz and Kholi, born in Iran, spending time growing up there. In contrast, Shada, born to Iranian immigrants in the U.S.
I'm just in awe. I cannot believe the bravery that they've shown. You know, women that are younger than me to go out in the street and to really risk their lives for just basic freedoms that we take for granted is incredibly moving.
Kholi's awakening came when she was only 5 on a family vacation outside Iran.
My mom didn't wear any scarf. I was shocked. I was so afraid. I yelled and I told my mom that you forgot your scarf. She started crying because she had no idea that her daughter doesn't know a normal life, normal society. She thought that everywhere in the world, we have to wear a scarf. We have to have a double life.
Was that just the given that you would have your head covered and follow all the other rituals, the rules?
As a child who didn't understand what that did to my identity, I thought that was part of growing up, to have to wear a headscarf in my head every time I leave the house.
Tell me what it was like for you growing up.
You know, the main thing, the most important thing is living this double life, the not living your true self.
Now they see a tipping point.
I believe that this is the end. We have to be hopeful that there is no turning back and a revolution will happen.
The new generation, either they don't have the opportunity or they do, but they don't want to leave their country. They want to fix it. They're there to fight to take their country back.
Now coming together to exhibit Iranian art inspired by the moment.
Art has always been a universal language, and it's been so incredible to see these artists be able to capture the emotion of a moment in time in one piece.
Supporting their Iranian sisters in the best way they can. Andrea Mitchell, NBC News, Washington.
Now to top stories, Global Watch, and an alarming UN report out of Pakistan. UNICEF says 1 in 9 children under 5 years old is suffering from acute malnutrition in flood-ravaged areas. The flooding this summer left nearly 2,000 people dead and damaged more than 1 million homes. And two-time tennis Grand Slam champion Simona Halep was suspended for a doping violation. International tennis officials say the Romanian tennis star failed a drug test at the U.S. Open in August. The banned substance is approved for medical use in Europe to treat symptoms of anemia. In a social media post, the former world #1 called the positive test a shock. She faces a ban of up to 4 years, but she can appeal. Thanks so much for watching Top Story. For Tom Llamas, I'm Aaron Gilchrist in New York. Stay right there. More NBC News Now on the way.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.